when it starts. Here we go. Right. Okay. So I was approached by my yesterday friend in the comment section, and he wants to just have like a general discussion and debate around some ideas around feminism and just some general talk around social politics on the whole. Um,
Yeah.
so take it away.
Well, hi, nice to meet you. This is our first time meeting one another. I contacted him actually because Christy Winters had reposted a video of his about blocking, which I thought he had some intelligent things to say about blocking. My blocking is a tough issue for me as well, because I think if someone's being a total douche, like, you have every right to fucking block them by all means. But the problem is when normal people get caught up in that blocking, sometimes you can insulate yourself to the point where, you're just making bad decisions. So that's what I think has happened a little bit with Steve Shives. And I don't know, I just did a video on Steve Shives and I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but I think, man, I think I'm the only idiot in the world that's like rooting for Steve Shives to make a comeback. It seems like everybody knows him, but he continually makes bad decisions. So do you have an opinion on Steve Shives?
Well, I actually quite like his content. I think
Oh,
he's
okay.
generally treated quite badly by a lot of people because there's some
I
sort of like I suppose like there's sort of a truth to saying that he makes a comeback because there's sort of a very like bad image of him presented on YouTube. And I saw
Right.
bits of your video, and I saw a bit where you just like skim through still images of like videos about Steve Shives.
Right.
And the fact that you type in his name onto YouTube and it comes up with like thousands of these responses and just people calling him like all sorts of names. And the
Yeah.
other day, like you see a video of a parody of him and his wife by Bearing, and it's like when that's coming through over and over again, it's easy to get a very bad image of Steve Shives. Um,
Yes.
but coming on to the insulation thing, I think that people like Steve who are facing a lot of this just no real criticism and just abusive like comments and images and stuff, they, like you said, have every right to block out that sort of person. Um,
Totally.
and whilst I do think it's important to have debate and to reason with people who are worth reasoning with, it's easy to see why people who are facing more than most in terms of abuse would be more protective of their social media circles and their YouTube comments because lots of people who watch the stuff from his like fiercest detractors will have no interest in reasonable debate and just like look to call them names and generally act pretty like abrasively. Um, so I'd have
I,
said that whilst insulation is one side, whilst with someone like Steve Shives, I can totally see why they have a more protected in a circle on their pages.
I completely agree with you. The thing is, I often feel like 95% of the people out there are just having fun. They're out there to be entertained. So they're easily going to get caught up in this drama and this back and forth of hating on each other. And that leaves such a small percentage of people that are really interested in a serious dialogue that you risk lumping those people in with everybody else. And I do think that Steve is making a bad argument. I think Steve has fallen into groupthink on his side. And I really think if he had an interlocutor on the other side that could reason with him, someone that was friendly towards him, I think it could go a long way towards tamping down some of the abuse that he gets. I think a lot of the abuse that he gets is simply because he came into first of all, he came in as a skeptic to the skeptic community. So you're dealing with people who are used to dealing with arguments, and his arguments are fallacious if not offensive. So I think that's, if he's unable to see that, it creates this abuse cycle. So the only way I think he could make a comeback is if he stopped that abuse cycle. I mean, in my video, I don't know if you watched my video, but I encourage him to do a stream with Bearing. I've seen Bearing go on with people of all stripes, and he's always, he's always a nice guy on a stream, and it's like it's easy to put out a video and just totally lambast somebody, but it's a lot harder when you're on a stream with them to be a total douchebag. So
Um, well, I think there's a few things I agreed with there. I think that definitely someone on the anti-feminist side who perhaps wasn't like openly gunning for Steve and was genuinely interested in conversation would be quite useful. But I think
right.
for all parties, because conversation is important to understanding ideas, and instead of just the back and forth you see between anti-feminists and people, like where you just have insults and no real arguments and just mass trolling.
Yes.
Like there's
Terrible.
it's clearly no one's benefiting from that, and it just looks embarrassing to someone who's not got any knowledge of the prior like situation. Um, but in regards to things like groupthink and ideas like that, I would disagree with the idea that Steve Shives is involved in like groupthink. I
Okay.
think that whilst it's easy to see that the people who he's interacting with more are going to be people who agree with him, and thus it's not as much Shives responding to criticism as it is talking about ideas of people who agree with him. Um, it's not necessarily that it's like everyone just has one set of ideals and just blindly follows it. I think it's again just more he speaks to more people that he agrees with, because those who disagree have all too often like betrayed his trust. And even when they've not necessarily, they're associated um, people that they're listening to, so like Bering, like Sargon, I guess, and people like that. He has made assumptions based a lot of the time on lots of fans who have abused him and stuff and treated him poorly, and
Right.
thus has made the decision not to interact with them. Um, and then I think groupthink can be applied to a lot of anti-feminists as well.
Oh, definitely. Yes, totally.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
deny that.
You look at like videos about Steve Shives, and the comments are like, Steve Shives is a cuck. His wife sleeps with black men. He blocks anyone and stuff like that. And they're like, just there's no arguments there. There's no like any initiative to actually like criticize his views.
Right.
Or if there is, it's buried deep within a post that's just mainly making jokes at his expense, and then there's like one or two things tacked on.
But
That is
if
said, but sorry, you
but if you do, this is really interesting to me. Do you think though, if he had a serious conversation with someone who was an interlocutor at his level, that was cordial and just stuck to the issues, don't you think that that would help his persona though?
Oh, I think that would be great. I think that if we were to see Shives in a debate with other people,
Mhm.
um, and it was actually rational, and actually rational, not just like the sort of rational that has been branded, where it's just anyone who disagrees with feminism is rational. Like an actually
Yeah.
points laid out clearly, no ad hominems, no just blindly insulting and stock memes.
Yeah.
That would be really beneficial, because I think then you'd see people agree with Steve Shives because he's quite an intelligent, resourceful person. And I think that when you move away from the cultivated image of him, that's this like um, insane guy who can't take any criticism and just hides away behind his wife, um, then you see that he has a lot to contribute, and he's got some really good ideas. Like I watch his videos where it's like I can't remember the name of the series. It's a bit bad because I watched it the other day. But it's on like episode 200 or something, and they're really good because I think he explores ideas around social politics quite well. Um, but when you approach it from the angle that lots of anti-feminists have given, it's easy to see why he's got this bad image. So yeah, I think it is and not just a case of a decent, calm person who disagrees with feminism approaching him for a debate, but also the other people to perhaps be more neutral when they approach his work. So
Mhm.
instead of going from response video to Shive's video, watch the initial video first and perhaps throughout the influence of other sources.
I think that's a lot to ask, but one of the reasons why I want to talk to you is I'm interested in having that debate, and I'm thinking maybe you and I can start that debate today.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
We got
because I
time.
mean, you seem like a rational, a rational, kind individual. I think of myself as a rational, kind individual as well. So I, I am definitely. When I first came into the YouTube environment, I had no idea that there was this big hubbub over feminism, which kind of speaks to the fact that feminism really is in the mainstream culture to the point where it's really not debated. And this embarking on it from different YouTube creators perspective, I started realizing that there really is kind of a debate. And I looked into it more and more. But I mean, I've considered myself coming to it with an open mind, which is not necessarily the best for starting a YouTube channel, because people want someone that has opinions that are solid. But I've really, over the course of time, I've definitely come down on the anti-feminist side, but I've come down on the anti-feminist side for rational reasons that I don't really think anybody is discussing. Like, we're definitely in a mudslinging war now over this stuff. But I've listened to videos from Christy Winters and Christiosity and Steve Shives, and I don't see any real arguments for feminism beyond just superficial arguments about the wage gap and consent, things like that, which to me are completely superficial. When you're structuring a society, there's a lot more that goes into it than just straight equality.
Well, I'll ask you to explore why you think these things are superficial arguments. Because whilst I think there's more to feminism,
Mhm.
than just those 2 points, I think they're not ones that are necessarily ones that should be brushed aside. Like
No,
economic inequality and consent as a part of sexual health, I think are quite still relevant things that we need to talk about really in society. So I'd ask you to elaborate on why you think they're
yeah,
superficial.
yeah, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was because I wanted to get a real perspective on feminism. I keep trying to interact with Christy Winters on Twitter, and she's basically like, "Go do your own research." I don't know. We were talking about this on a stream last night. The internet, I am one of those people that firmly believes, Google it yourself. And I've Googled the shit out of this stuff, but it's impossible to tell if you're reading some fucking blogger's opinion or actually research. She sent me to Google Scholar, and I did. I looked on Google Scholar, but man, you really have to know these people. The advantage that I have with my side is like I have a bunch of people on Twitter that I know will respond to me that are academic resources. I sent a tweet out to David Sloan Wilson, who's a respected biologist, and he gave me tons of great information on my side of the argument that's really helpful, which I will probably mention today, reference today in our discussion, but are definitely something to consider from the anti-feminist perspective. Isn't anti-feminist like the worst term ever? Like, why can't we be for something? I hate that term. So, but what are the big points of what? There was a debate that Christy Winters had with Sargon of Akkad whether or not feminism was good for society. And that debate is about an hour and a half long, and they do not touch on anything. They're just talking past each other. I mean, Christie's argument can basically be summed up as, men take advantage of women, and therefore we need feminism so men don't take advantage of women. And Sargon's argument is basically all of the things Christie's saying are crimes, and feminism doesn't do anything in the world, in the Middle East, where people really need feminism. They're just focused on non-issues here in America. And I mean, both of those are important points, but for me, it's really about, structuring of society. do you, I mean, you're familiar with the MRA movement, right? And
Yeah,
MGTOW and those kind of things. I mean,
yeah, sort of.
these are institutions that are being that are evolving from society that I don't necessarily know that feminism isn't a huge part of. I don't know that if we, and not just that they're reactionary, like they hate feminists. I think there are tangible reasons why feminism leads to, a lot of times it leads to female promiscuity. I mean, male promiscuity is still an issue, but there are evolutionary reasons why female promiscuity can lead to bad results in society. And I know that
Uh,
sounds awful. It sounds terrible. And I've never been against female promiscuity. I'm a liberal all the way. You know, I'm close to maybe a hedonist. Like, do what you want to do is my motto. But I'm just looking at it from a rationalist perspective. There are certain social and societal outcomes to being a hedonist. There's a video ContraPoints does that I'm working on a response video to right now. Are you familiar with ContraPoints?
Try to him.
Yeah. I he made a really good video and he talks about hedonism, and I am in the same camp as him. But the problem is you can't structure a society with 100% hedonists. So where do you draw that line? Do you think human beings would be 100% hedonist if given the opportunity? I mean, what makes certain people hedonists and what makes certain people not hedonists? There's a culture aspect to it, and feminists tend to fall on the side of, culture drives everything. So if culture does drive everything, we could literally make a society that was 100% hedonistic. And I think my gut tells me that the 100% hedonistic society would not be a fun society to live in.
Um, well, I work from the bottom upwards. So your most recent thing was about hedonism and female promiscuity. Um, and I feel as though saying outright that female promiscuity leads to bad social consequences is something I find a little bit uh, misleading.
Okay.
Um, and when you frame hedonism as something that's like,
Just, can I press you on the point of misleading? How is it misleading?
oh, because it implies that associate says that like it's a bad thing, promiscuity. Like the word itself implies negative connotations because of the
Right.
society
So
we live
so
in.
we could think of a different word if that's going to be a problem, but I'm I can draw I have evidence that female promiscuity can lead to societal problems. So that's just why I'm pressing on the point. I
Well, what
mean,
sort of evidence? Because like I don't see how having a more open, a more active like sexual life and general nightlife and stuff leads to widespread societal problems. If anything, I would say that
do you
maybe
think
indulging
that
like
do you
overly happier and more active like problems leads to a more relaxed society. And if
and
you have
that's
more people happier, then you're going to have a more productive and engaging population. I feel.
Yeah, but that's just a feeling. I'm going to actually pull out evidence. That's the difference. The if you think of, first of all, what is your take on family life? Like, is it better to have two parents raising a kid? Is if single mothers all the way from here to infinity are not a problem, my argument is not going to make any sense to you.
Well, I think that there's different things for different people, and circumstance will.
Oh, I totally agree with that there. But is a child better off being raised with a mother and a father?
Well, it depends. Like
Or
it
or
depends on
two
the.
or two mothers or two fathers? Is two parents better than one? Let's put it that way.
Well, I think that it's important to have figures in your life, but I don't think there's like quantifiable evidence to suggest that um, somehow your childhood will be ruined by having one parent. Like, would it be better to have two parents, but one of the parents is rubbish? Like, if you're with one half of the parental factor is poor, then often, like, I think that it'd be better to have a single parent. And there's other factors as well, like economic factors and
Sure,
social
totally.
upbringing, which it contribute to a child's upbringing. So like a single
Yeah.
parent could have like more wealth and thus be able to spend more time with their child. Or maybe they don't do as well because they don't have a lot of money and they have to work lots. Thus, the child's been deprived of time with the parent. And
Right.
as a
So we
consequence,
we
that's
we
not the
you're doing
single.
great at establishing a bunch of scenarios where every like nothing matters. I mean,
Well,
it, yeah, okay. We can think up a situation where six people where a child has six parents that are all terrible people and they're better off having no parents and being an orphan. But I'm just saying, on average, I think most people would agree that it's better to have a mom and a dad, or even just to know that your mom and dad. Like, let's say it's a gradation, right? Best case scenario is you have a mom and a dad. They're your biological mom and dad. They know you. They love you. They would do anything for you, right? That's the best case scenario, correct?
well, I guess so. But then there's other
You
factors
guess
too.
so. So give me a better case scenario or a worse scenario.
Well, because there are plenty of people who will have been raised by either their like mum alone or their dad alone or a foster parent, and they'll say their childhood was great and they really had a really like close bond to their single parent.
Sure. But we're talking about the outliers. We're not talking about overall. Like I'm talking when you're talking about society, we're talking about, you know, huge numbers, the law of averages, right?
Well, I suppose, but I think you're ignoring the other factors. Like most single parents, I think, are those who are economically less off and they have to dedicate more time to working to sustain their child. Whereas
Correct.
single parents who have a lot of money anyway will generally have an easier ride looking after their child. So I think that the economic quantifier in this sort of
Would
discussion
you
point is
would
what.
you agree that single parents that are poor outnumber single parents that are rich?
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Okay. So that would lead me to believe that anyway, we're getting off track. So
Um, you were linking this to female promiscuity, I think.
yeah, totally. But it's going to be difficult to do that if you're not even willing to accept the premise that kids are better off in a household where they know where their they have two parents that they know are their parents and love them. I mean, then all bets are off. I mean, it's really it's
Well,
like
you can continue.
that seems like a pretty simple rational point, but I guess it's not. I guess it's controversial. So
Well, I don't think it's. I'm not by any means saying that
did
one
you did
parent
are
is the
you
better way to
were you
go.
raised by a single mother? Were you did you
No, my parents are still together, and I
Okay,
have many
and
siblings.
they were together?
Yeah.
And so you grew up in the best case scenario that I lay out, right?
Well, like I guess so, but I don't think
Okay,
like
okay.
I think that there's more to the story than just how many parents you have.
There is, yeah, every story is completely individualistic. I completely agree with you. And if you want to go looking for outliers to make your case, that's called post hoc reasoning. That's basically saying, I have an argument that I want to make, and I'm going to go look for evidence so I can make that argument. I mean, I'm just looking at the world. I'm saying, okay, I'm not trying to say that a kid raised with two parents that love them, I'm not trying to make an argument that that is a better thing. I'm looking at the world and saying it appears that that is the case. I mean, if it was the opposite, I would be saying the opposite. If kids did better being raised by a single mother in a low income environment, I'd be telling you, hey, we should be working towards that. Do you think we should be working towards more single mothers in low wage environments? Is that what we're working towards?
Well, but I think the problem is that we're focusing on the number of parents rather than economic situations. Someone in the chat has raised a good point that a single parent is more likely to be poorer, and it's the money which is the problem.
Yeah,
Um,
they
like
call
there's
that parental investment. That's called resources. Yeah. A child that has parental investment from two working parents will be better off than a child with the parental investment of one parent.
well, exactly, but that's the economic that's ruining or lessening the childhood, not the parent. Like there's plenty of, like you said, double parent families where the child still has a rough upbringing because their parents both have to work a lot to bring in money.
Totally.
So I think that the question of how to give a child a better upbringing is down to economic factors and the surveillance of the societal factors in that, rather than how many parents.
So we found agreement then. We totally agree. Economic factors.
Yeah.
We're in agreement there. Economic factors make all the difference in raising kids.
A mix of things, but yeah, pretty much economy, where you grow up, like social surroundings and stuff. So
sure,
yeah.
totally. So yeah, and surroundings is, it's better to raise a kid in a low crime environment than a high crime environment, right?
Yeah.
So I can all of these things can be traced back to economic factors, and economic factors are something to completely consider. So
yeah,
female promiscuity can lead to single mothers raising kids. Like if you're okay with the whole world being single mothers raising kids, then that's not a problem. I guess my argument boils down to more female promiscuity, more single mothers. I guess that's the way you can lay it out.
well, I think that, well, yeah, more people having sex is more likely to lead to, or you increase the chances of there being more children and more single parents. But that's not to say that female promiscuity should be curbed because of that. I think that not only are there ways to like have sex and not have kids, through the means of protection and abortion and women's health control and stuff, but also like, even if there were more single mothers, it's not the single mothers that's the problem. Like, because if the woman who went out and ended up pregnant, and decided they wanted to keep the child, like there's more options. They can either put the kid up for adoption, or they can raise the child themselves. And I don't think that the fact that some people who are promiscuous, or you have lots of sex, and like you end up pregnant and keep a child, should be seen as a burden on society.
Okay. I'm not seeing them as a burden on society. I'm just saying it can lead to more single mothers. It can lead to more children being raised in low resource environments. It can lead to higher crime rates.
But said that you're saying that you don't see it as a burden, but then you're saying it's leading to the like decay of a society in a way. So,
well, you're calling it the burden. I'm just saying these are the way. This is the way it is.
But
is that a burden on society? I don't know. I mean, society ranges from very ordered to very chaotic, and a lot of that, I think there's an argument to be made, and I'm not sure how to make that argument, but I think that there is definitely an argument to be made that it can be linked to more female promiscuity.
But I completely I disagree. I think that,
right, but what yeah, okay, how do you disagree?
Well, because firstly, we're ignoring like male promiscuity as well, because
yeah, but male promiscuity doesn't really factor in for a lot of different reasons. But go ahead.
Like it takes two to produce a child.
Right, but the problem is paternity uncertainty. Like the mother always knows who the child belongs to. The problem is this paternity uncertainty thing. Like guys, you've seen all these shows on TV where they're like, you are not the father. You, like, I think it's Maury Povich, or they have tons of shows on TV.
Yeah, there's loads.
Yeah, loads of them, right? That is taking advantage of this fact in society that paternity uncertainty exists in massive amounts. And no guy wants to raise a kid that he doesn't know is his own. And the most important time in a child's life, according to, attachment theory and tons of study being done in psychology, is that first 2 years is so important. And the first 2 years is when it's toughest to determine if a kid is actually belongs to a guy. Like the guy, when the kid's 8, it probably looks exactly like the guy if it's his. But if the father hasn't been involved in the child's life up until then, I mean, the kid probably hates him by then. So, I mean, paternity uncertainty is the real problem. There are ways that we can deal with that technologically. I don't hear feminists talking about any of those ways, but paternity uncertainty is the problem, and maternity uncertainty doesn't exist. That's why you have single mothers. You have single fathers now, because there is paternity testing. Like, I don't know that there's not a single father out there that hasn't done a paternity test on their kid.
Well, again, like I think that like sometimes single mothers and the paternity uncertainty does lead to kids growing up sort of resenting the father for their sort of absence. But that's not
But is that
necessarily.
the father's fault? I mean, if there's paternity uncertainty, I mean, this is a problem Mother Nature has been dealing with like feminists often talk about toxic masculinity. This is why those behaviors in men evolved to fight paternity uncertainty. This is why men are more violent than women.
But how is this a fault of female promiscuity? Like, I get that you see some fathers like lose out on time with their kids because of this uncertainty, and I get that some single parents end up with a lot of a chaotic upbringing of their kids because of the sort of uncertainty around who the father is and all that going on.
Right.
But there's more to this than like female promiscuity. I think the sex lives of women shouldn't be curtailed simply because single parents exist. And I find that like the idea of a kid doesn't want to grow up without a father, or a father doesn't want to raise a child that's not biologically their own. I find that a little bit like almost outdated in a way. Like, I feel as though we've sort of moved to times when having a child that's not necessarily your own, and ideas around this sort of idea can be explored without the need for like exact biological equal like representation.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree.
You reckon that I mean, yeah, obviously there's people.
Well, I read a book. I read this book, The Murderer Next Door by David M. Buss, and he basically looks at homicide statistics, and if like stepchildren are far more likely to be murdered by a step parent than than anyone else. So this idea, I'm just talking raw statistics here. So if like stepkids tend to have it rough, and I know I was a step kid myself, and I had it rough. So I can relate.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry for your experience of being.
Hey, I didn't mean to bring it up in that means. I mean, I had it mildly rough by compared to someone. Like, I never came close to getting murdered, for heaven's sakes. But just looking at those statistics, I mean, I've felt some of the feelings what they talk about in that book. I've felt some of the feelings that those kids have felt on a lesser level. I mean, he goes through in the book and does interviews and stuff like that. And you're like, oh my God, these situations it's grueling, man. Imagine being a kid afraid of your stepfather. Like think of the Disney franchise. Like, how many Disney movies revolve around an evil stepfather or stepmother, right? I mean, that goes back, eons.
Well, I mean, obviously, yeah, there are some cases of some pretty terrible step parents, but I think that's
Right.
kind of a very outdated idea. That sort of comes back to the idea that divorce is bad, so it's sort of rooted in tradition and stuff. But I could tell you plenty of my friends from secondary school and stuff who didn't grow up with their biological parents or
Right.
had a
But
step
that's
parent.
all anecdotal evidence. That's not real evidence.
In a way, so the people that have been taken from this study. If you did interviews, and their anecdotes too. Like, I get that there are some really shitty step parents out there, but there's also some who are far better than the biological parent will ever be. And I think,
The interviews were based though on the data, the homicide statistics data. So it's a wide sample. It's statistical data, and then interviews were done to elaborate on the experience that the data shows. So, like, what you're providing is anecdotal evidence only because you're saying there are some people that did fine, but until we know the number of people, it's immaterial.
but most step parents don't, certainly aren't like harsh or abusive or anything
You don't know
to
that.
well, how are you able to say that they are? That a step
I'm
parent
not
is more likely to.
I'm not saying that they are. I am saying that in this book, David and Buss looked at the homicide statistics and found out that you are more like your chances of being murdered by a step parent go up a certain percentage. I'm hesitant to say it because I don't have the book in front of me, but that's based on evidence. And the interviews that he does come in after the fact to kind of figure out what's going on here. He's making a case. He's making an evolutionary case why step parents are more likely to beat their children to death. Like, there are a lot of one of the statistics he's pulled out is, men are a lot more likely to murder than women. And this is all based on homicide statistics, right? But women do murder people, but they murder people in very specific situations. And most of the time when women murder, they murder their own kids, which is weird. But they murder their own kids in situations where they would be better off not having the kids because a potential mate sees the kids as a cost. The guy doesn't want to raise his own kid or doesn't want to raise some other guy's kids. And so the woman feels it's better off to murder the kids than to actually try to raise them alone, which I mean, I can't imagine. Can you imagine raising like 4 kids on your own as a single mother? I can't think of something that sounds worse.
Well, I mean, it would sound difficult from a perspective of someone who's grown up with two parents, but
Right.
if again we have the other factors in that childhood or the childhoods that will make the experience either great or not as great.
Yeah.
But coming back to the idea that somehow it's like more in our nature to be less sympathetic and nice to people who aren't biologically related to us, um, I have to just like I think that humanity has evolved to a point where that's not as big a deal. Like we're not in
Right.
times where things like adoption and divorce and remarriage are taboos, or I'd hope not anyway. And as a result, there's loads of people who don't grow up with their biological parent and they have step
Right.
parents. And there's no abuse and stuff. Like
Right.
I'm sure, yeah, there are going to be some cases where people don't have the easiest of upbringing, but a lot of them, not only is it not abusive, it's just a case of missing their like actual parent who's no longer present as much. That's not a case of the step parent being abusive. That's a case of the person not reacting well to change, which is hardly unique to step parents and parents. And again, we draw it back to the initial like topic where where this stemmed from, which is female promiscuity. And I don't see how this is specifically relating to one gender's promiscuity, which in itself isn't something which should be a problem. I think that we should be liberal enough and free enough to be able to enjoy like active sex lives. And if some people want to have more sex than others, then I don't think that should be a bad thing. Like
You're a man though. Like, all men are calibrated to want more sex.
no, but that's the same. Lots of women want lots of sex too. Like
No,
I don't.
I totally agree. But all I'm saying is there is a problem that our whole cognitive architecture has evolved to solve this paternity uncertainty problem.
Well, that's not tied just solely down to the fact that more women have sex, and there's ways to solve that.
There is though this whole MGTOW phenomenon, and there is this whole MRA phenomenon, which I don't is a new thing, right? We didn't have MRAs and MGTOWs. I guess maybe we had MGTOWs in the 1600s. I don't know. Yeah, we probably did. I mean, MGTOW is going to form anywhere that that monogamy doesn't exist, that polygamy exists.
Well, the thing with like them is I didn't see how that to the like what you're saying about female promiscuity being a factor in problems developing in society.
Right.
Unless you want to elaborate, I guess.
The problem when you have a bunch of unmarried men pooling in society, those unmarried men are more likely to engage in criminal activity, which would be something like, I mean, the MGTOWs are online right now hating on women, right? I mean, that's what they're doing now. But when it reaches critical mass, it's like, let's go start breaking into some homes and some cars and shit, right? It's like, what do you have to lose if you don't have a girlfriend? You don't have any chance of getting forming a family. Like the only girl that likes you slept with 100 guys. Like, what are your options? I mean, it sounds like breaking into cars is more fun than starting a family.
The phrasing of the idea that the only girl that likes you is one who slept with 100 guys, like that. Why does it matter how many people that girl slept with? Like, I think that.
Would you hold on here? We're just talking raw emotions here, okay? Would you marry a woman that you knew slept with 100 guys?
Yes, that wouldn't factor into whether I'm marrying this woman, to be honest.
Would you publicize it? Would you marry maybe that's cool with you? And props to you, man. Props to you. Like one of my favorite artists is Jeff Koons, and Jeff Koons married a porn star, and I thought that's fucking awesome, man. How can you hurt a guy like that marries a porn star, right? Because what are you gonna tell him? Your wife's a slut? Because I knew that, right?
That's such a like old-fashioned view, isn't it? Like
it is totally. The only problem that I have is like I listen to these MGTOW videos, and I don't like your attitude and Jeff Koons' attitude. I'm not sure it's my attitude. is how prevalent is that in society? And can you get 100% of men to buy into that? Because my thinking is you might be able to get 10% of men to buy into that who are cool with that. And the other 80% of men are going to go out and break into cars.
I'm going to have to.
And hold on. Society is bad if 50% of men are out there breaking into cars, right?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah, breaking into cars is not, and general theft and stuff isn't a good thing. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's all I'm saying. And there are plenty of statistics. I don't have them here in front of me. Like, we're not having a formal debate here. This is just me feeling out. Like, there's a funny video, I'm sure you've seen it, about Christy Winter saying robust feminist argument, right? I am looking for that robust feminist argument. I think I'm the only one out there looking for it. So I have a robust anti-feminist argument. I want to know what I'm up against. The arguments that you're giving me, I don't know. They're giving me some leads, and I'm definitely sympathetic to the fact like women should be able to vote, women should be able to work. The problem that I have, and I mean, the problem that I'm always running up against is like, how do you continue down this path and not end up with 50% of men breaking into cars? Well, that's my thing.
I think I'm sorry if I offend you, but I feel as though you're thinking slightly flawed on this. Like,
okay, tell me where it is. I'm totally open-minded to that. Where's my thinking flawed?
Well, because what's it say of these men that they're so like unhappy with their lives because the woman they sleep with also sleep with a lot of other guys, but they have to go and break into cars and like.
No. I'm saying that those men are only going to have sex with those women. They're not going to start a family. And when men start families, it makes them less likely to go break into cars. And when men don't have families, there's tons of information out there on how they're more likely to engage in criminal activity and risky behavior. Like family life civilizes people. It does.
Well, I think there's a disconnect between the stats and the idea that family life is crucial to civility. Yeah, more
Right.
people who
Okay.
commit crimes are going to be those who aren't in families, I guess. But
Yeah.
there's different reasons for that. Again, often tied to the economy, because people need to have money to survive, and thus
Yes.
stealing is justifiable to these people when they're in economic uncertainty. But
Right.
also because in a family there's more to risk, like you've got people to look out for, so you're less likely to risk your own standing in society by becoming a criminal.
Totally.
Um, but with like single life, like I don't think in the modern 21st century people necessarily need a wife and kids, or a husband and kids and stuff to stay afloat. And there's plenty of people. I don't think there's plenty of men who also like really enjoy sex and don't necessarily want to start a family with every woman they sleep with. That's the same for women. And I don't think we should attack these things and attack the modern sexually active lives of people simply because one statistic shows that crime is more likely to be someone who's not in a family, when there's plenty of other reasons for that, and the active sex lives isn't the problem. Like I find it incredibly like guess almost insecure in a way that people would say that my inability to find a long-term partner to have a family with is what causes me to be unhappy in society. That then, if you're going to follow that route, then that removes the happiness of plenty of people in society who just want to enjoy having sex with people who also enjoy having sex, and lose like their enjoyment for the sake of some people feeling more secure in their lives. Like I find that very reductive, and that takes us back to a very old-fashioned like viewpoint where, well, I guess sex is for families and marriage and stuff, and I find that to be a bit really outdated.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of practical purposes. Like sure it seems old fashioned, but it's old fashioned because it serves a practical purpose. That's I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, a traditional family is a traditional family because it's an efficient way to raise offspring. And I understand what you're saying. You're saying not everyone wants to raise offspring, and I'm comfortable with that too. But I mean, a lot of people do want to raise offspring, and a comfortable family setting, I think, is both good for society, and I think it's good for those individuals. I think it's good for a lot of individuals. A lot of individuals find a lot of meaning out of it. So
But why should the active sex lives of people who aren't related to the people who want to be in families, why should that affect someone else's decision to make a family? Like the the man.
it goes back to the hedonist thing. If there there is a certain amount of disposable fidelity in the economy, right? But once 100% of it is spent, like once the ability to make these stable families is gone, then society crumbles and the next generation is not renewed. So that's all I'm saying. I'm saying it's better to live in an environment. Have you read the book Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, he goes into a lot of this in here. It's the economists call it social capital. And it's best to live in an environment with high social capital. And what social capital is, it's basically trust. It's basically being able to interact with people that you trust. In low social capital environments like the inner city where crime is high and nobody trusts anyone, it's a terrible existence. So one of the things that makes high social capital environments is stable family situations. So like all I'm thinking purely in terms of, and I don't have any numbers on this, but it's it's number of stable family situations to number of, you know, chaotic, well, chaotic is bad because it says it's bad, but let's call it liberated family situations, or alternative family situations where, you know, it's maybe a single guy or single woman, they're planning on being single their entire lives, you know, they're not planning on getting married or having kids. Or maybe single mothers would lump into that, you know, single fathers would lump into that. I mean, there's just where we're at, and I'm sure there probably is numbers on this. I don't know where they are, but I just wonder when, you know, when the tipping point is. I mean, when our whole entire generation is being raised by single parents.
But
I don't know what that's like.
well, I think that the idea that not being in a traditional family is a necessarily bad thing. We already sort of discussed this.
Mhm.
But like
Yeah,
social
yeah, you don't think it's a bad thing, and I totally agree with that. And there are plenty of situations where it's not a bad thing. We've established that as well. So, but
yeah,
we're talking big pictures, like society wide picture here.
but the amount of sex and like active sexual lives, it doesn't affect the overall things in society. Like we don't need to be curtailing and focusing solely on the sex lives of women
So
to take
you,
care
so
of the
you don't think the sex lives of women have any? You think the two are completely unrelated then?
yeah, I think that we should like.
Okay, that's good.
I think that it's important to with social capital. Like, yeah, I know that's a concept, and I know that it's the higher social capital people have, the better society is. But it's hardly as though like the increased sexual lives of women is going to just plummet the social capital of the people. Like, there's other factors as well, and you forget that
Well,
supposedly
the
traditional families.
high, if 100% of females are are porn stars, you don't think that's going to affect social capital?
Oh no, that's different though, isn't it? Because that's like,
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's my argument that I'm making. Like, if 100% of females decide they're going to be porn stars, how does that affect society?
oh, there's more. Well, firstly, right, being a porn star isn't a bad thing. Like, there
Okay,
are.
so then you're fine with it then. If let's carry this out. It's not a bad thing. 100% of females are porn stars. How does that affect society?
Well, I mean, we're sort of suspending reality here, aren't we? Because
Well,
there's,
I'm just saying it's a sliding scale. When you're talking about promiscuity, we're talking about a sliding scale.
but
I agree that in order for a functional society to work, there are lots of different types of people, and each of those different types of people serve different roles. Okay.
mm,
So 100% of any different vocation is problematic, but I'm not really saying any different vocation. Let's say 100% of females are as promiscuous as porn stars. Let's put it that way. How does that affect society?
but again, you say promiscuous like it's a bad thing.
I'm
The
not saying it like it's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is it.
well, like
How does
in
that affect society? You're the one saying it's a bad thing.
well, you're implying that it's a negative thing.
You okay?
But
Sorry.
the
I'm
argument,
sorry. I'm sorry.
you have to be shy. It's just it's a way. You mean you did literally say that it'll lead to the like breakdown of social capital a few minutes ago.
Okay.
But anyway,
Do
being
you agree
responding
with
to
that?
no, because
Okay.
like I think that we need to like move away from this sort of negative perception around having a lot of sex. Like, and we need to like if as long as like sex is good between like all the parties involved,
How do
like
we do
where's the
that though?
problem?
How do we do that though? That's my question. How do we do that?
Well, through proper education around sex and through
Okay.
liberal positive ideas around sexual health and sexual activity, and the breakdown of stereotypes around what constitutes good sex and stuff. And that sort of comes under feminist theory, which I suppose leads us back to the idea that the arguments you're criticizing by people like Christy Winters and Christiosity around
Right.
consent are
So,
actually good arguments because they help to contribute to the criticism of bad, negative ideas around sex and poor sex education.
But this argument rests on the fact that culture can change these men. So that that's great. I totally understand what you're saying. So they're saying the way to get around the fact that people have a problem with female promiscuity is to change the culture. That's the whole slut shaming thing. That's like the whole slut walk thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. I totally got you.
Like, we can look at things in the past where views around elements of society have been poor and changed through education. Like, for instance, sex outside marriage was at one point seen as like a massive taboo, a massive no-no. Like, you mustn't ever do that, otherwise you're like sort of a leper to society. But now, like, it'd be laughable if you suggested that, or you'd hope someone would be laughed at for saying something like that. There'll be times when like moving outside gender related things here, like a time when a mixed race couple would be seen as like abhorrent and disgusting by lots of people. But education has shown that racist ideas like that are fruitless and hold no bearing and are clearly racist. Like, through education, you can cultivate a society where things that are seen as taboo and bad don't become as negative. It's like the same. People would have argued like 100 years ago, oh well, having blacks in our society and our marriages will lead to the decay of society. But yeah, here we are 100 years later, and there's been no like societal decay by the integration of races. Like, it's the same thing. Like, I feel as though if we're more liberal with our ideas, our thoughts around sex, and we end up with a society where promiscuity isn't seen as some negative thing to throw at a woman, but just like some people are more sex active than others. It's like, it's not going to lead to a breakdown of society at all. If anything, I feel as though it will lead to a more like positive society, because a lot of people are undermined and underpinned by themes around sex, and a lot of people, especially women on this side, are left unhappy because of the way that society has viewed them or treated them based on like things like their sexual life. And ultimately, a happier population leads to a more productive and beneficiary society. So really, if we are able to combat negative ideas around sexual lives and promiscuity, then we can lead to a greater society. So I suppose I'm like completely disagreeing with you on this, but
no, you make some valid points, and I wonder. I don't know that the race argument that you made is a perfect analog to or a perfect analogy to the promiscuity argument, simply because there are reasons, tangible reasons, why men feel disgusted by female promiscuity. It's to get them out of a situation where they're raising another man's offspring. I mean, the argument that I think holds some water is there are technological workarounds now in the modern society that could bring those feelings into line. The race thing was more of a cultural thing. It's like somebody, like I'm sure race felt disgusting to a lot of people, and it felt not disgusting to a bunch of other people. And those people that weren't disgusted by it would want to do interracial marriage, but the people that felt disgusted by it were socially pressuring them not to. And that disgust subsided, but there wasn't like a clear evolutionary link between those where there is with the promiscuity thing. So I don't think it's a perfect analogy, but I wonder if those forces could subside over time, and they obviously have subsided in a lot of men. I wonder if they could subside in all the men. That's the question that I have. So,
well, I see where you're coming from, because I think from that angle, I can see why the two aren't perfect analogs for each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. If you look at other like animals and mammals, like,
I mean, we're social creatures. We pressure each other socially all the time, but I can't see people pressuring. I mean, you understand what I'm saying here, right?
Yeah, like for instance, in a field of like cows, there'll be only one bull because the bull that's
Totally.
looking at other offspring that's not his own will just kill the offspring. And yeah, if we reduce ourselves to basic primates, then I could see why like the potential for other kids being raised is a thing. But we're not primates at all. We've evolved to have thought and basic empathy and stuff. And I think we're at the point now
Well,
where the biology of a child and their relation to you doesn't really matter, or it shouldn't matter if we think about it logically. Like, it doesn't matter whether you birthed the child and you provided the sperm that made the child yours. Like, if you're that child's figure that they call the dad, it's like it doesn't matter where they came from, and there shouldn't be any taboo
that's you
around.
though. That's going out on a limb. I,
Well, how is it going out on a limb?
well, just your also even the empathy that you said. People experience empathy at different levels. I mean, that's the whole thing about society. Like there are people out there that would just not even they wouldn't even consider raising a foster child or an adoptive child. Like there are tons of those people, which you're admirable for being for saying it doesn't matter, but I think it does matter to a lot of people.
But that's not a sign that, oh well, penal promiscuity is bad and single parents are something we shouldn't have, and every parent couple should aim to have their own kids rather than
No, no,
adopting them.
no, no, no.
Um,
I'm not saying it should be one way or the other. I'm saying that there's a mix that's good, and that if we push that mix too far, if we go to the 100% porn star realm, we're treading on dangerous water. So
but we're not though. If we were able to change ideas around this and see it so that um, people in society didn't care whether their kids were biologically
yeah.
their own.
Well,
Um,
yeah. See, that's a weird thing, though. That is a weird thing.
but it would have been weird to debunk
We
racist
could
and homophobic ideas in the past. Like,
we could be 100% interracial marriages. Okay, I'll give you that. I don't think that would change society. You know, maybe it would. I don't know because there are people who are like, no. Like there are still people out there that are like, no, I would never. Like they're probably physically disgusted by interracial marriages. Those people exist. So, but I would guess if we were 100% interracial marriages, it wouldn't have a huge impact, like the kind of impact that 100% porn star would
oh,
have. Like, I don't know. Somehow I just see that being as like that would just be, I don't know. You're saying society would catch up. Maybe it would.
well, no, but the thing with like with that yeah, there definitely are people who think that interracial marriage is something that's disgusting. But thankfully, a vast majority of people hopefully see those people as like racist loons and stuff, and they're like
No,
they say those
that's
things. Oh,
bad, man. That's terrible. Don't.
yeah, exactly. Like if
No,
someone
no,
says,
no. I'm saying it's terrible to call those people racist. Just because they wouldn't have an interracial marriage doesn't mean they're racist. Come on.
well, it's a view like seeded in racism, technically, isn't it? I mean, if you're literally going
I
out of your
don't
way and
know. Sexual preferences is a weird thing, man. On the genetic level, I just feel like, who you're attracted to is probably calibrated by evolution. I mean, it's probably
well, it's
there's
learned
probably
though, isn't it?
something if you're repulsed by someone who's a different race, like sexually, there's probably a good unconscious evolutionary reason for that. And you don't know that there's not. I mean, maybe your genes wouldn't work well with their genes or something. Who knows?
But there's no like inner gene which stops you from being attracted to someone in theory. Like it's all learned technically because you look at
No, are you kidding me? No, come on.
but
How can you will probably tell me that homosexuality is not a choice, right?
well normally no,
Is
but
homosexuality a choice? Because what you're saying is homosexuality is a choice.
homosexuality is not a choice. But even if it was a choice,
Okay, well then heterosexuality is not a choice then. Like liking black girls is not a choice. Like
no, but
liking white girls is not a choice. Liking guy, it's either a choice or it's not a choice.
there's a difference though, isn't there? Because if you look at beauty standards or what society is deemed to be an ideal beauty standard across the world, it changes, doesn't it? Like, despite the fact
Oh,
that we're all
totally, totally. And there is some kind of there is some social we're social animals. We're influenced by, you know, if you have a friend that says, "Oh no, she's hot," you're like going to train yourself to think she's hot. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Cultural, it's a mix. Cultural plays some role in it.
well, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to say like, because I feel as though I've heard this in the past, it just gets turned into, if you don't want to marry someone who's not the same race as you, you're racist. Like,
Well, that's
but
what you're saying. I'm saying you're not.
I was saying that someone who's vehemently opposed to interracial marriage based solely on the grounds that like they wouldn't marry a person of a different race.
Yes, totally. I agree with you there. It's an important distinction. You're right.
But at its core, openly just rejecting the entire notion of marrying someone who is of a different race to you simply because, oh, I wouldn't find them ever sexually attractive. Like, they may not be a racist person, but that view is technically racist. Like, I don't see how it's not. If you've just openly like
We
stated
got to
that
straight.
I
We
have
got to
out,
straighten this out.
sorry,
We got to straighten this out. I don't want it to be on the live stream because the difference is important here. If somebody is not attracted to someone, is not into having an interracial relationship themselves, that doesn't mean they're racist. If they are against anybody having an interracial relationship because it's gross, that's racist.
I agree.
Okay, so that's where we're at. I just want to make it clear. It wasn't really super clear.
I agree. I think the only it, it's just that if you the view itself like is technically one born of social like ideas um that are technically at core like racist. I'm not saying that, because obviously, yeah, sexual preference isn't something that you can like
Yeah,
change
totally.
really.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I agree.
and
And there are racists in the world. Welcome to humanity,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like racism
Yeah, it
isn't.
exists. Hey,
It's not exact. It's not like ever just the case of black and white, like normal people and the KKK. Like,
I'm only making the distinction because of the political atmosphere that we're living in right now. Like, I think people are going heavy handed on the racism thing. Like it seems like everybody's fucking racist now. And it's not a good, it's as much as like, it's worse than the female promiscuity in my book. Like separating people into these identity politics just drives me crazy.
um, well, I think there's hyperinflation and stuff with those issues on all sides.
Yeah.
Really, I think because of what's
Perfect.
going on politically, like every issue has become really over focused on and stuff. Like we
Totally.
not over focused. That's probably a poor word. It's become it's always,
Polarized.
I guess. And whilst I think there is a lot of truth to what is being said, and I think it would be silly to just say with any identity politics issue to just disregard it. Um, there's still a need to I guess analyze each situation individually with those things.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
but coming back around to the female promiscuity thing, we were talking about how there's always going to be. You were saying that there's going to be men in society who don't find the idea of female promiscuity compatible with what a decent society should be, or something. It was something like that.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. I mean,
Now,
that is an analogy to there is somewhat of an analogy there to the race thing. Like, there are people that are always going to find female promiscuity disgusting, and it's not just females, it's not just males, it's females as well. I mean, this goes in, I don't know if you know a lot of the science going on around this topic, but there's a debate going on whether or not there's group level selection for evolutionary selection. And there's an idea that humans engage in, or humans benefit from something called group level selection. So there's cultural adaptations that have shaped us, and slut shaming is very possibly one of those cultural adaptations. That if there are two tribes, if there are two groups, and if one group has like a bunch, like they're at the 100% porn star rate, like all their females are promiscuous, no, like none of the kids running around there know who their real dad is, so they're less likely to be protected. The tribe that has, pair bonded units, where, every kid in that tribe knows exactly who has two parents and knows who their father is. If those two tribes go to war, the tribe with the pair bonded units are going to just like eviscerate the other tribe. And that in our ancestral environment, that made this slut shaming adaptation stronger. So that's the argument. I don't know that. I mean, there is some evidence, and I'm looking into that evidence, but there's the argument. You take it for what it is.
But can you transpose that onto a modern societal
That's the
context?
question. That is the question. That is the question. That's the
I
big
don't think you
question.
can really. I mean, like the scenarios that tribes face and the things that go on within tribal life
It,
are quite different to modern society, where it,
I'm saying that's where the urge to slut shame evolved from. That's where it
but
comes from. And slut shaming exists in the world. It's a phenomenon that exists. It's in a lot of places, in a lot of societies. So the question is, how did it evolve?
do you not think that's like not something which you just inherently have in you, but something you learn from your peers in society as a whole?
Slut shaming?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough because a lot of this stuff comes from, like you said, the emotion of disgust, right? And I mean, a lot of, emotions are weird because they have this predictive quality to them. They're like gut reactions, and those gut reactions, a lot of the interesting things about things like sociobiology and evolutionary psychology is those gut feelings, those emotions tend to be evolutionarily linked. Like you made the bull analogy, right? The bull isn't consciously thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get me a bunch of these females, it'll be great." Like he's just working off raw emotion, right? We
Hmm.
have that raw emotion that motivates our behavior. We have this rational apparatus that has been tacked on later, so we have a lot of justifications for a lot of the things that we do. But there's a compelling argument to be made that those emotions are really what's motivating us. So it's tough to say that instinct that people have to slut shame. I mean, it's
But
it's rooted in emotion, right?
well, like sort of,
I
but
mean,
I
your
don't.
dad doesn't sit down and my dad, I don't know, my dad never had that girl's a slut conversation with me.
Well, I mean,
I didn't learn slut shaming.
no, but obviously it's never like they literally sit you down and be like, "Oh, these girls are sluts, young man." Like it's never obviously going to be like that. 'Cause that's like silly. But
But nobody ever told me the reason why you were worried about a girl sleeping around. Like the emotion is jealousy, right? Correct?
oh, in a way, yeah. But these things,
But jealousy serves a purpose. A lot of people don't know what that purpose is, but they still feel the jealousy, and they still act the way you're supposed to act, right?
but
Jealousy
being
is good for your genes.
no, but being jealous of someone who's not having sex with you isn't the mean to then say, "Oh, they're bad," and they're an indicative problem of society. Like when I say slut shaming is learned and not something you inherently have, is because like you see people around you and society as a whole sort of portraying women who sleep around a lot as negative, um, when the reality of what they're doing is literally just having sex more than some people, and that's not something which there's no link to that and like a bad character or person. They just have sex more often, um, and we've seen as time goes on in society that ideas around sex have become more and more progressive and less like traditional and conservative Christian and stuff. Um, and that's definitely a good thing because if we base all our ideas around sex on the traditional lives and stuff, then we don't have LGBT equality in sex, we don't have normal ideas around sex, and we just have a more miserable population. Um,
Yeah.
and I just find it very silly to uh, suggest that the emotions that men feel when they see women sleeping around, when often these emotions are like wrong and a fault of them rather than the woman they're criticizing. We can't take these emotions and base our society around
Are
it.
they wrong though? I don't know that they're wrong.
Yes, they are
How are
wrong
they wrong?
because they shouldn't be like annoyed with people for not
But
having sex with them. No one's entitled to that.
but you're not making it. You're just saying because I feel this way. I mean, that's not an argument. My argument is they're right because jealousy is how you guard. Jealousy is good for your genes. It is. Like if you're jealous of a woman having a lot of sex with a lot of different guys, that's your genes telling you, hey, you're not going to have any kids with that woman. That woman is not going to help you shuttle your genes into the future. Like she's and anybody else's gain in the shuttling your genes into the future game is your loss. So that jealousy is basically motivating you to get out there and get yourself a partner to push your genes into the future. Like that jealousy is good for your genes. That's my argument. Your argument is that jealousy is bad because I feel that way.
No, but there's a difference between like making a judgment on whether you want to have that person as a considerable long-term partner and using your view of that woman to transpose wider issues with women who are more sexually active than others. I feel as though there's a disconnect
And
between
this is this
finding
is also this is also where the tribal situation comes in, because that woman being promiscuous, having a child that nobody that doesn't have a father in the ancestral environment could have been a burden on the tribe. It's a different situation now. I agree with you. But still the emotions that drive people to slut shame her because what her kid could be a burden on the tribe still exist today, even though the modern world has changed. Those emotions still exist, and those emotions would be good for your genes because, if we're living in a tribal situation, any resources that are going to her bastard kid and not our family are, that's bad for my genes. So
bastard.
that makes logical sense.
Um, well, I mean, I don't think that's a like. I don't think we're as that enrooted in our pure genetic thoughts and stuff. I don't think it's in our genes to slut shame.
It
Um,
does. It does. That argument that I just made, it just occurred to me that does transpose onto the state situation, because a lot of the reason why people don't like female promiscuity is because they're pissed off about the single mother thing, and they think those are welfare moms. Like people make that argument all the time. So
but
they think, so that is a direct analogy to the tribe, because they're paying taxes. Those resources are being rooted to these single mothers who are basically raising bastard children. So
yes, but that's not. They can have those thoughts if they want, but they're wrong, aren't they? Because like again, the same they would have said in the with interracial couples, oh well, black people are on
it's a
average a
not
cost to the
the
system.
interracial couples can raise their kid though. I mean, it's not a burden on the tribe situation. It's not a burden on the state situation. So,
But if
we've talked, we should wrap this up. We've talked for a long time, and I actually have another thing going on. Let's go, but I want you to make it, I just want to let you know, let's go for like another 5-6 minutes.
yeah, sure, we'll wrap up this point.
Okay.
So if these people are getting annoyed at promiscuity because they don't like single mothers supposedly leeching off the state, then they're not they shouldn't be criticizing promiscuity. They should be criticizing the economic conditions which lead people who have to look after a child whilst also working jobs to survive in the economy. They should be criticizing that economic system, and also that having lots of sex doesn't just instantly lead you to having a kid by yourself. Like the two aren't just like correlation is not the same as causation, is it? So,
I totally agree. Yeah.
and I
Uh,
suppose also like I think the one thing we overlooked as well is that we're basing this all on the views of mainly men who think that this is a bad thing. What about the women who are being impeded by this? Like,
there are plenty of women that think this is a bad thing too.
oh yeah, sure, but there's also plenty of women who don't, and plenty of men who don't. And why should their
Totally.
lives be curtailed simply because some people have made a poorly thought out decision to blame society's failings on women's promiscuity?
This is the debate. This is totally the debate. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But that's why I'm interested in having this debate. Like, I don't think people are having this debate. I think people are bickering over the wage gap statistics.
Well, I mean, I'd argue there's some truth to them and stuff, but that's the debate for another time, I feel.
I know. I find this debate far more interesting. I don't know about you. Maybe this has just been a standard debate. I don't know. I haven't talked to many feminists about this. I mean, I made a shitload of notes here, and you've helped me out a tremendous amount understanding the arguments. So,
well, it has been a very interesting debate. I mean, I didn't really expect you to have the arguments you did, so it was refreshing to hear some I'd not heard before. So, I suppose in a way, you are right in saying that it's not something that's discussed a lot. But
yeah, no, I would like more people to have this argument, because one of my feelings is society really emerges out of a lot of people's different ideas about the way to structure society. And I think bickering over little points of statistics over and over again just aren't really talking about the big picture. And I want to have a conversation about the big picture because, first of all, I think it's just interesting as fuck and totally entertaining. And I think, coming to some real, so like, it's impossible to make, we are just going off our gut feelings if we don't have the conversation, right? I mean, we're just going off our gut feelings. We're just saying, like, I feel like a lot of people are out there just saying, I feel this is the way it should be, without really engaging the real arguments. So
yeah, I suppose like it's always good to converse, so you get a better understanding. But anyway, this is a good point to wrap it up. Thanks for coming on, Friended. It's been great having you.
I wanted to say one thing too. We meant to say it at the beginning of the stream, but we never did. There was a comment by Essence of Thought, I think, on your page. Essence of Thought thinks I'm like a Poe. I don't even know what a Poe is. I had to look it up. Like, are you familiar with the term Poe? Do you know what a Poe is?
I'm actually not, to be honest.
Yeah. So I guess it's someone pretending to be, like, I changed my channel name. I changed it once. I made a video about it. Like, I've had shout outs from tons of different YouTubers. Like, Essence of Thought is crazy, I believe. I think he might be insane. So I just wanted to put it out there. But that's all I want to say.
He or she will respond in the comments.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's listening to this and they want to, because I know I interact, like, my fans might watch this stream. Hey, let Essence of Thought know that I'm for real. I'm happy to talk to him too. So,
well, I mean, like you said, I'm a small channel, so I've not really got anyone watching this live, but I'm sure people will watch it at time. So
yes, totally. And I know Christy Winters watches your channel, so
yeah,
that's cool. I would love to have a real conversation with her. Another thing that I'm interested in is, like, man, let's talk. Let's stop the flame war, for heaven's sakes. All right, it was good. It was good talking to you, Owen. You want to stop the stream? I'll stay on the line.
Yeah. We'll end it now. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks to Friended for coming on with me.